Hello, welcome to the Jellyfish Journals. My name is Susie, and this is my 2025 reading journal. So, right now, I'm about to jump in and do all of the updates for everything that I read in July. So, let's get started. All right, so my first stop is always to pull out this little library card. I did not loan any books to anybody this month, but I am going to use the back of it where I created my swatch chart. And I've already pulled out all the markers that I use that go along with this color theme that I decided to use for 2025. So, the first thing I always do, pardon me, is I color in the books that I read for my 25 in 25. And July, I think I was able to knock out three, maybe four of them. I can't remember. But the first one I did read was the Poisonwood Bible, which was phenomenal. And it's funny because it's actually kind of a chonker book. So as you can see, there's no rhyme or reason to the thickness of the books that I drew compared to the thickness of the actual book. But pardon me, I don't know where I was going with that anyway. Sorry. I also read The Word is Murder, which is the first book in a series by Anthony Horowitz. I loved that book. I thought that was so good, and I'm really excited to jump into more of his writing. And I actually managed to finish The Arabian Nights. That was a summer goal of mine. I did start reading it in May, and it's basically one story where the main character tells a lot of smaller stories within it. And so I would read every day while I ate my lunch. Sometimes I would just sit and give myself an hour. Sometimes, if the story was not that long, I would be able to plow through and read that. But I was able to finish it in the month of July, which was kind of awesome. I was hoping to finish it up during the summer because I knew once I went back to school that it would be a little harder to get through that book. You might also notice on all of these, I kind of am trying to two-tone it. So the more you layer with a Tombow marker, the darker the color is. And I'm just kind of using that to my advantage. That way the books aren't just flat colored, if you will, with one color, but they have a little bit of detail. So sometimes I add little stripes to them, or sometimes I add little diagonal marks, or this time I'm just going around the border of the Arabian Nights book with that same Tombow blue marker, and it's just darkening up the border of that book. So just some little things to change it up. Now I'm on to my reading log. I read 12 books in the month of July, and yes, that does count Arabian Nights, even though, like I said, I technically was reading that all through May and June. I just record the book in the month that I finished the book. That just seems to be the easiest way to keep it consistent. I write the title of the book, the author's name, and my star rating on this tracker here. So now that that's done, I am ready to move on to my reading challenge page. And you can see here I've written all the prompts next to each month or underneath each month. And then I went ahead and glued all the covers of the books that I plan to read for each of the challenges. So for the month of July, the book was Hello Beautiful. And the prompt was to read a book that I knew nothing about. So I truly opened up this book without a clue of what it was about. And I actually ended up loving it. For my July book bracket, it is The Spell Shop. My printer started to completely cut out of ink. I was able to print the larger copy for my book tracker, but for the smaller one, it did print it all weird. So I'm going to have to go back and reprint those once I have some ink. That way the color or the cover looks a little better in color. So for now, I just glued it down. You'll see I have to do that somewhere else in this journal as well. I am highlighting my books read again, which is 12 books. Again, I really thought I would get a little bit further in the summer than that. I I had high hopes, which is why I made my tracker go all the way up to 18. But July had a few chonkers in it, and so I just did not get as far as I thought I would. I actually ended up even reading fewer pages in July, as you can see, than I did in June, which also surprised me given that Arabian Nights fell in the month of July also. So who knows? Who knows? All right. On this tracker, I record the dates that I finished the books that I read. I use one color for the print books that I finish, one color for the digital books, and one color for the audio books. And I basically just color in those dates. Now, I saw someone else do this, and I thought it was kind of a fun idea just to see when I finish books in the month, if there's any kind of pattern. Honestly, at this point, the only thing I still notice that stands out is if you look in that third column, that huge block of books where I read, that was spring break. And I got through a ton of books during spring break. So I don't know yet if I'm planning to carry this tracker into next year. There's something kind of fun about it. I'm also kind of noticing around the 20th or 23rd of each month, I seem to finish a book. And of course, at the end of the month, which I imagine is for the same for a lot of readers, especially if you're tracking things, you might finish books a lot at the end of a month because you're trying to get that book done in that month so you can record it. This is my year published garden. And I am already trying to brainstorm how am I going to do this again next year with the theme I have planned for next year. I love this so much, even though most of the books that I'm reading are falling in that last category of 2020 to 2025. And I think a lot of the reason for that is, first of all, I get my books on my Kindle. I just do the free Prime reads each month. Those are the only ones that I bother with on my Kindle. And I notice pretty much every single one of those is newly published. So right away, you can figure every digital book I've read this year has probably fallen in that category. The other thing is, obviously, any new releases that I've read or a new author that I've heard about is probably going to fall in that time frame as well. So most of the books that are in this garden, or most of the years published for the books I've read this year, have fallen between 2020 and 2025. But since I read Arabian Nights, and that was published sometime, I think, in the 1700s, I might have that wrong, but it was definitely before 1899, I was able to have one giant blue flower there in the middle of the garden. And that, I don't know, it kind of makes me smile to see that there. I try to spread out the colors a little bit in the hopes that if I do read something in a different time frame, I can fill in the garden, but mostly it's that 2020 to 2025, like I said. All right, on to my bookshelfie. I have already written down all of the books that I'm planning to hit for my reading challenge this year. I've also written down all of my 25 and 25 books on on these shelves. And so all I'm doing on this is I'm just going through, and if there's a title of a book that I've read in the month of July, I'm coloring it in using one of those colors you see on the swatch chart on the left. I like doing it this way. I know there's a lot of different ways to do a bookshelfie. There's just something kind of satisfying about doing it this way for me. There's no rhyme or reason as far as I'm not trying to fill a shelf first or read anything in any particular order. And so it's kind of fun at the end of each month to hunt down the books that I've read, look at the colors and see which colors would make my shelves stay balanced. I just enjoy filling that one out every month. On to my genres read and my new book tracker. So this one gets a little bit confusing. My genres read, every box counts for 2 books. And I did it that way because I tend to read a lot of mysteries and thrillers. Well, I should say thrillers, and I combined horror in that category too because I read a couple of books that were classified as horror, and I didn't have that category on here. This is another tracker. I'm not sure I'm going to continue next year, or if I decide to do it, I might carry it across 2 pages. I'm just finding that there are so many genres that I didn't even consider when I set all this up. So anyway, my genres read, each box counts for 2 books, but the exact same chart on the next side where I have my new books, each box counts for 1 book. And so sometimes I have to like slow down and catch myself for that. But thankfully, looking at this, it looks like most of the books I've acquired have either been from the library or were given to me as a gift, which makes me feel pretty good about my budget. So on this page, I keep track of each of my monthly stats all in one place. So you could say that this is like, I don't even know what you could say. Maybe this is my yearly month tracker or my monthly year tracker. It's kind of like a year at a glance, I guess is probably the best way to say it. And really all I document on here are the number of books that I read, pages I read, how many books were print, digital, or audio, how many new books I acquired, and how many books I did not finish or DNF that month. And then I gave myself a little space for notes on the side. I didn't really have anything to write this month. This was the first month I didn't feel like I had anything worthy to say, I guess. So I just made a note that I read a few chonkers this month and just those bigger books. And I don't like a lot of empty space, so I drew a little happy face because who doesn't love to say they got through a few chonkers, right? My next spread is my A to Z challenge, and once again, I have not read anything new to put on that tracker. But happily, for my Read the World tracker, I was able to fill in 4 new places. So I read a book that took place in Louisiana. Then I read the Poisonwood Bible, which took place in the Congo, which politically it's something else officially, but that's where it is in Africa. I had to look up Arabian Nights. It technically took place in Persia, which is modern day Iran, so I colored that in the Middle East. And then one of the books, I think it was White Mulberry, took place in, they called it Korea and Japan. And so I colored in North and South Korea because it didn't specify, and it's possible that they weren't 2 separate places back then. All right, for my book bingo, I decided that In the Lives of Puppets definitely fit the prompt of Woods Full of Secrets, since the characters lived in the woods and had quite the huge secret. It also filled in the gap for a green covered book for my Read the Rainbow spread, and The Word is Murder worked for a black cover. And so I am only missing aqua and purple right now. I'm pretty happy with all these covers. The Alchemist I know I worried about for a while, but it definitely looks orange now between that red and that yellow. So I feel pretty good about that. There were no new recommendations this month, and so moving on to my thriller tropes, I don't think these are going to give anything away. I had an eccentric detective read, which was The Word is Murder. I would technically call it more of a mystery, but he was definitely an eccentric detective. And then Amateur Sleuth was Her Every Fear. Although again, I would say there are probably a lot of thrillers that have an amateur sleuth in them. I was very happy to be able to tuck Arabian Nights into my classics pocket. I definitely think I'll be doing a pocket again next year. I really like that. And there were no books that were DNF'd. So all that's left for my yearly reading journal trackers are the new books that I acquired in the month of July. So starting with Pachinko down at the bottom there and moving on to this flap. Now, one thing I didn't think of is obviously that's going to be kind of hard to write on. So I decided I'll just use my current journal to use as a, I don't know, a extra table or whatever, writing pad. I can't think of the word right now, but I guess platform maybe. But anyway, it worked out just fine. It was the right height so that I was able to write down those new books that I acquired. I'm going to have to think of a way to extend this though, because I think I'm going to run out of room again. All right, let's tuck in that library card pocket and let's go ahead and flip over to July, where I have my milk and cookies theme, and I'm going to go ahead and document all of July's things that I like to track. So starting with the up next page, again, these are just random books on my physical TBR that I know I want to tackle in that month. And so, of course, I had Hello Beautiful because that was my reading book challenge for July. And I also try to pull a book or two, depending on the month, from my 25 and 25. And so for July, that was the Poisonwood Bible and The Word is Murder. So really, out of these 5 books, 3 of them were kind of already designated in a way, I guess, one for July and the other 2 for this year. I like doing it that way because I think it helps me not feel like I have to read everything on my 25 and 25 first, so it's done. I'm able to kind of keep track and say, okay, I have this many left out of that challenge to read. If I divvy this many up for the next few months, I should be able to get through that list. It also helps me make sure that I'm accounting for my reading challenge book each month, but it also kind of, I'm trying to think of how to explain this because I'm very much a mood reader, which could mean anything from I've read a lot of thrillers and now I want something different, or that title on my shelf keeps catching my eye. I want to read it so I can say I've read it. I mean, I really don't know what mood reader means for me other than I want to read what I want to read. So when that happens, or when I do this spread, I always track down or write down sorry, my cat is really just distracting me right now. He's kind of losing his marbles in the basement. My daughter is getting ready to move into her first apartment, so there's some boxes and suitcases and things in the basement that aren't normally there, and he's losing his mind. Anyway, so every month you're definitely going to see my reading challenge book on this spread. You're going to see 1 or 2 books, most likely 2, from my 25 and 25. And then I just like to pull a couple of books that I have been wanting to get to. So, for example, in July, that book, In the Lives of Puppets, just keeps catching my eye on my bookshelf. I've read my other 2 TJ Klune books. TJ Klune, yeah, I said that right. And it was the only one of his on my shelf that I had not read. And so I said, you know what? This is the month. This is what's happening. And so 3 of these books are kind of already spoken for. The other 2 are, I kind of think of them as like freebies. But since they are on my physical TBR shelf and they are on that shelfie spread, I don't know why I colored this one like this, by the way. It reminds me of a sock. I just thought that was worth saying. Pardon me. So yeah, and if you've seen my August setup video, I only allowed 4 books that month because August is back to school, and I knew that that would be a little bit crazy. It might be hard to get through 5 books. So I don't know. I think it's just kind of a fun little challenge to do, to try to just say, these are books I want to get to in this month. Anyways, moving on to my actual reading challenge for the month, I had to read a book I knew nothing about. And Hello Beautiful, I did not know anything about it. I saw the cover a few places. I did read the flap when I got the book at a yard sale, but that was probably last year. So I did not remember what it was about, and I intentionally did not reread the flap at all. And I was so pleasantly surprised. I gave this book 5 stars. Not to overuse the title, it really was a beautiful story. And so I'm just documenting some thoughts I had about it. And that's all that's going on that page right now. I'm going to go ahead and move on now to my new books challenge, and this page makes me smile so much. I wasn't sure if it was in poor taste or not. I did make a post on a reading journal Facebook group that I'm in, and overall the consensus was it would be kind of funny to do this spread. So definitely apologies if this is insensitive in any way to somebody, but I tried to check before I put it out there, but I decided to turn the side of a milk carton into Have You Bought Me? Honestly, the main thinking behind this was there was a lot going on with cookies. I needed a way to bring more milk into the spreads, and this is just what popped into my head. And so I did acquire 9 new books in the month of July and decided that I was going to go ahead and list those here. Sometimes I'll put the author's name also, but I knew I was not going to have room for all of that. So just listing those books out, and I'm not going to lie. I mean, I hope it's not offensive to anybody, but this is probably one of my very favorite spreads I've ever done in this journal. On the page beside it, these are going to be my 3 top reads for the month. I really struggle with this every month, with trying to figure out which books were the best, especially when I feel like there are a lot of 5-star reads. There's that other Spell Shop cover I have to reprint because you can see that purple splotchy on it. I'll fix that soon. We just got new ink. Oh, and Poisonwood Bible came out kind of pinkish too, so I'll fix those. But I do struggle with what to do if there were a lot of 5-star reads. And so ultimately, I lean on which books were the most memorable and which books would I probably end up recommending to the right reader. So my mom would probably love The Word is Murder. I've already recommended The Spell Shop. And my friend who recommended Demon Copperhead to me, I think she would love the Poisonwood Bible. And so that kind of helps nudge my top 3 reads each month. Those kinds of things to think about. Okay, this is my July stats page. You can see for the month of July, to go along with my Milk and Cookies theme, I decided I was going to do the ingredients to make chocolate chip cookies. And I usually only record 7 stats each month. Well, not usually. I do only record 7 stats each month. And it's kind of funny. I drew 2 eggs, and there were only 2 digital books that I read that month. I thought that was kind of funny. But there were actually 8 main ingredients in chocolate chip cookies. You can see the baking soda there under my left hand. So it doesn't get a stat on there, but all of the other ingredients, I tried to leave space to put a stat on. And this is just a fun way to look at how I did. That's really all it is. I love being creative. I love making things and thinking of ways to present things. And this is just a lot of fun. It was kind of fun to limit myself to a small color palette. The white chocolate chip was really bugging me. I actually can't stand white chocolate. Not to say that was a white chocolate chip, but it was a white chocolate chip. So I did decide to go back in with that lighter brown and color it. I don't love it per se, but I thought the dark brown would be too dark for that. So at least now it's not white chocolate, because I won't eat white chocolate chip cookies. I don't know. I don't like white chocolate. And the last spread that I have every month is my books read. And this is just a spread where I put all the covers of the books because they are like adorable little tiny trophies. And you can see here my ink was working fine because the Poisonwood Bible and the Spell Shop are both printed beautifully. So I just have to do a couple reprints. But you know, it's one thing to look at your bookshelf and see all the books. And I don't know about you readers, but when I look at my bookshelves, which are right next to me right now while I record this, I see beautiful books. But I know there's a lot of them I haven't actually read. I also know that my audiobooks and my digital books are not on my physical bookshelf. And so I just love this little space in my reading journal where I can glue down the covers and I can see all of these things that I've read. I never really get to look at my audiobook covers because they're on my phone. And my digital covers, my Kindle is black and white. And so sometimes when I go to look up these covers, I like the white mulberry cover. I remember I saw it when I went to print it. And I was like, ooh, that's a gorgeous cover. I had no idea because it's not colorful on my Kindle. Sadly, of course, you don't get things like sprayed edges. I did end up buying a copy of The Spell Shop. Just out of dumb luck, my husband and I were at Target, and I think it was on sale or they had a book sale, and I knew I wanted it. I was almost done listening to it on the audiobook. And then, funny enough, what ended up happening, it turned out to be a good thing that I bought the book because my book was due, let's say like July 21st, The Spell Shop. The audiobook loan was due back on Libby on July 21st. And normally you have until the end of that day. Let's say I checked that book out physically at the library. I would have till the end of that day to turn it in. But on my app, and it could have been the Boundless app. I'm not positive it was Libby yet. My library just switched over to the Libby app, so I might have still been listening to it on Boundless. But I woke up that morning and they'd already removed it from my app. And I was so bummed because I only had like 3 chapters left to go. And it turned out to be a really good thing that I actually had the physical copy. So I was able to just finish up those 3 chapters. And since the majority of the book was audio, I just still counted it as an audiobook. But I was really kind of bummed about that. I thought for sure I could just finish it up and return it that day, the day it was due. But no, they said today's the day, we're taking it back. And obviously there's a wait list, and I can understand that. So not that big a deal, but turned out to be a good thing. I had it after all. So anyway, last step is just to make a little note if it was audio, digital, or print, and the star rating. And that's pretty much going to do it for my July reading journal update. Leave a message in the comments. Let me know if there's any spreads that you love or if you have any ideas for the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more of my content, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.